in Traverse City speaking with the CEO of Addiction Treatment Services, Chris Hindbaugh. Chris, addiction is a gray area that a lot of people have misconceptions about, particularly when it comes to who are addicts. What are some of the typical misconceptions you see?
Yeah, right. Actually, to speak to that, there actually is very little gray area on what an addiction is. It is a brain disease. We know a lot about that, right? So the definition, the literal definition of addiction is really clear. But that doesn't always jive with our social reality and our social perspective, which, for lots of different reasons, the image is, very often somebody that's indigent, somebody that's homeless, and those are easy, or criminal. Probably more often we hear of folks having some, with addiction we associate with criminal activity. And very often that's not the case. So that's probably the biggest misperception, that there is an overrepresentation of those particular stereotypes, when really addiction knows no bound, socioeconomic, racial, gender, really is pervasive throughout our community.
Right, just like disease in general affects a very different and diverse population, and so people don't see it that way, though, and it is a disease that affects people, and for some reason people always think of it as a choice, and that these people got themselves into this situation and that they don't deserve help, but that couldn't be further from the truth. And so your services are really in place to break those barriers and to help the people who need it.
Right. We tend to what we like to call moralize the issue. We make it a moral issue as opposed to a medical issue, as opposed to a brain disease. And so in that, our policies, for instance, the criminalization, the war on drug, really has to do with that perspective, that there is a choice. And yes, clearly, there's a choice to use drugs, illegal or legal, for recreational purposes. There's a choice, but we've all made that choice. Very few of us have not, be it underage drinking, abusing alcohol, smoking pot, whatever. And not everyone's cut out to be an addict, is another thing we say. And so that means that some folks have a higher propensity, and addiction will find those folks. And so, again, with no bounds, no socioeconomic, there really is no picture of an addict, right? Especially around the opiate addiction. What we're really seeing is a trend with opiates, which start very often with prescription drug abuse and use, and then when that supply tends to restrict, then heroin is an easy replacement. So what we're seeing now in our communities all over the country are middle-income, middle-age, professional people struggling with addiction, and in higher rates than we know what to do with, and that the system can really handle. And those folks in particular aren't fitting the stereotype, and so we're really trying to look at the system and how can we switch the system that's really been built for those folks that have hit rock bottom, right? In the criminal justice system, that's where you could get help in this country historically, was you had to be sort of down and out, or you had to be wealthy enough to pay for it. So we're really trying to build a system that really is inclusive of everybody, that does not fit that demographic.
Absolutely, because so many people don't realize it could be the person sitting right next to you. You don't ever realize who's affected. And so a lot of times, though, people have all of these misconceptions put into their head, and therefore when the addict needs help, they don't seek it because of all those negative connotations about it. Tell me about that.
Yeah, right. One of our most significant challenges is really trying to create a culture of recovery in our communities, to get with all the shame and the stigma that goes into seeking help because of those negative stereotypes. It's quite literally killing folks that aren't seeking help. They're too ashamed, they're too afraid to say I need help. Employers don't know how to handle that. So somebody that might need some assistance from their HR department, they're not going to seek that out because in fear of losing their job. So lots of barriers to treatment, and so one of the strategies is really have a public health strategy that has prevention at one end, treatment, and then really long-term recovery and recovery supports. Really think that's the key to making sure that people feel comfortable getting access to care.
That's great, and that's what you guys really try to do here. And so, Chris, if there's somebody who knows someone who's affected by addiction, or maybe they themselves are, is there a phone number that they can call to reach your services?
Sure, 231-922-4810 gets to our main office, and we're able to support anybody throughout their continuum of needs.
Great, thank you. In Traverse City, I'm Abigail Blackrick with My News 26.